Hello and welcome to part 27 of the ongoing S&A level Java series, and in this episode we are going to be looking at attributes. So before we get started, let's actually create a class called person.java. Then we are going to use this class to actually demonstrate the concept of attributes. So maybe let's start by defining an attribute. So an attribute is a class level variable, right? Attribute is a class level variable. So what this means is that since it is a class level variable, it means that any object that is created from that particular class is actually going to have that variable by default. So one thing that I forgot to demonstrate in the previous episode was to show you that you can actually create several methods. You can actually create several objects from the same class. So maybe let's actually do that in this for starters. So let's have a variable called string name, and then we can set that to maybe John. Then let's also have another string called age, and by default we can set that to, actually what we can do is alright, it's okay, let's set that to 89, right? Then let's actually create a main method. Then within the main method, let's instantiate the two people or two persons, as it were, since we are talking about the person class. So let's have the first person. Let's have person, that's the name of the class that we want to instantiate an object. Then let's have p1 for person 1. Then we call the new constructor, the new keyword, then the constructor for the person. Then maybe what we can do is we can simply sys out person, p1 dot name, right? Then the next thing that we want to do is we want to create another person. So let's have let's say instantiate, or rather create person object called p1. We make sure that I capitalize the class name in there so that there's no confusion. Then let's also create a person 2, the second person called p2. So create another person object called p2. Then we can then say person p2 equal new person. Then I can do the same thing. I can do sys out, then I say p2 dot name. So what I want to demonstrate in this example is I want to show you that this name right here, it's a class level variable. So it means that any object that you create from you instantiate from this class is actually going to inherit this name. So let's actually just go ahead and compile and run this code. So java c, then person dot java, then let's actually run person. So you realize that we get John, then we get John again. So that's a class level variable. Any object that you instantiate from this particular class is actually going to inherit that variable. So since it is a class level variable, it means that any object that you instantiate is going to have that particular attribute. But sometimes you might want to make it so that your objects have a unique, or rather a unique variable value, as it were, or a variable name. In this case, we have a variable called name, and you want your p2 to have a different name altogether. So since this is a class level variable, right, the key word here being variable, it means you can actually change it, is it? So what we can do in order to access an attribute, you need to make use of the dot selector. So I think we've been using the dot selector since the beginning of the series, right? When we were saying system.out.println. So system is the class, then out is actually an attribute from the system class, then println is a method from that particular class. So let's actually do that. For us here, what we're going to do is we're going to say p2, then we make use of the dot. Then since we want to change the name, we then say name equal to, maybe let's change the name to something else. So let's go with Paul, right? Then let's come down to the console, compile the code one more time, then run it. So this time you realize that we get John, then we get Paul. So basically what we've done in this case is we've overwritten the value for what, for the p2 object there. So we've overwritten the default value of John and we've set it to Paul. So that's how you can go about it. Then maybe what you can also do, let's just seize out the edge there. So we say p2 edge, right? Then we can do the same for the first object there, p1. So we can say p1 edge, then compile and run. So you realize that John 89, Paul 89. So yeah, again, it's just demonstrating the concept of it being an attribute, being a class level variable, as it were. And we've said that you can overwrite it, right? Then sometimes you can actually have let's say let's have a variable called salary of type double. Let's make it 5. Actually, let's leave it like that, right? So what you can actually do is you can actually have an attribute that has no default value, like in this case. So what this does is that it allows you to actually assign a value to your variable. Once you've created your particular object, right, you can then set a value for that particular object. So let's make the salary for person 1 or for p1. Actually want the salary there. So salary, then we can set it to 89.63. you just need a double value there. Then maybe what you can do is we can then print the salary. So print salary right there. Then we can do the same for p2. So let me just copy this, paste it, then change this to, make sure that I change this to p2. Here I also change to p2. Then maybe I can change this one to a different value altogether. So maybe let's go with that value, 789 or 7865 as it were. Then let's just compile and run. So you realize that we get John 89, then 89.63, 36 rather. Then we get Paul 89, then 78.65. So the salary, as you can see, it's an attribute, right? But it has no default value. So upon object creation, we can then go ahead and set that particular value for our particular object, as it were. Then maybe suppose you didn't want to have a default value for your you don't want to change the default value once you instantiate your particular object. So if you remember, we talked about constants, I think maybe in the earlier episodes, and we talked about how you can declare something as final. So you can actually do that again with attributes, right? So we are going to say final, maybe let's say status. We need a type for our status, so let's make it a boolean. So let's make status true, right? So if you declare something as final, an attribute as final, it means that you cannot override it. Even if you try to, it's not going to work. So let's actually try, and we know that isn't going to work, right? But let's actually just try it here. So let's try to change the status to false. Is it? So you actually realize that we get a red squiggly line right there. Before we even think of compiling the code, our ID is actually telling us that we cannot do that. So it's saying that the final field person cannot be assigned. So this means that you cannot change the value of an attribute that you would have declared as what is final. So yeah, I think that's just about it for this episode. The key takeaway being that an attribute is just a class level variable. So let me just uncomment this. So yeah, I think I'll see you in the next one.